Welcome back to the channel, my dear and lovely friends. Imagine this: you're rifling through a handful of loose change on your kitchen table, maybe a few dimes here, a nickel there, and your eyes stop on one small silver-colored coin. You study the date 1990. You notice a tiny D mint mark just above the date. You think to yourself, it's just another dime. But then something nudges your curiosity. Maybe the edge looks slightly different, maybe the design feels oddly off-center, maybe it simply feels sharper and cleaner than the others. And instantly you wonder, could this ordinary little 1990 D dime be worth far more than 10 cents? Could it be a rare coin with a story that stretches back decades, hidden in plain sight, quietly waiting to be discovered by someone paying attention? The idea that everyday pocket change might hold a treasure is what draws millions of people into the fascinating world of coin collecting. And when we look at the 1990 D Liberty 1 dime from the United States, we begin to see not just a piece of metal, but a part of history, a product of minting technology, and even a small object that can be worth far more than its face value if it has the right combination of condition, rarity, errors, or mint mark characteristics. The 1990 D Liberty 1 dime, part of the Roosevelt dime series, carries with it a legacy nearly half a century old by the time it was struck. The Roosevelt dime was first introduced in 1946 following the death of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had become associated with the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio. Roosevelt's image on the dime has been one of the most consistently recognized pieces of U.S. coinage ever produced. But by 1990, this familiar design had also become one of the most commonly used coins in daily commerce. The Roosevelt dime that year was produced in massive quantities because it was a useful denomination for everyday transactions. The 1990 D dime was struck at the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small D mint mark located above the last digit of the date on the obverse front side of the coin. The mint mark tells collectors and enthusiasts where the coin was made and plays a role in how certain coins are valued. The mint produced hundreds of millions of these coins to keep up with the demand of commerce, meaning that the vast majority of 1990 D dimes sitting in circulation are simply worth their face value of 10 cents when they bear no unusual characteristics and show signs of regular use. In the traditional numismatic world, most everyday coins, those that have been carried in pockets and registers, slid through vending machines, and spent countless times, are worth only what they were meant to be worth. A normal circulated 1990 D Roosevelt dime without any notable condition or errors typically trades for about 10 to 35 cents at most, a modest premium over face value that reflects typical demand among collectors for coins that are complete and simply not worn down. But that's only the beginning of the story. Because in the world of coin collecting, value is driven by rarity, demand, condition, and uniqueness. A coin that was produced in enormous quantities can still become valuable if it satisfies these conditions, particularly if it shows exceptional quality or physical characteristics that deviate from standard production. One of the first areas where this becomes evident is in a coin's condition or grade. Enthusiasts use numerical grading scales, often from MS-60 to MS-70, for uncirculated coins to reflect how sharp and pristine a coin's details are. A coin that shows no wear from circulation retains its original mint luster, and has crisp, fully defined details is considered more valuable than one that's worn or damaged. In the case of the 1990 D dime, circulating examples that reach higher uncirculated grades can be worth significantly more than face value based purely on condition alone. For example, according to recent coin pricing guides and actual auction results, a standard uncirculated 1990 D dime in a mid-grade such as MS-65 might sell for several dollars, a modest collector value compared to everyday change. But when you climb the grading scale, coins that achieve grades like MS-67, MS-68, and higher, especially with designations such as full bands FB, which show completely defined horizontal lines on the torch on the reverse, can command substantially higher prices. Some high-grade 1990 D Roosevelt dimes with full bands have been recorded selling at auctions for prices ranging into the hundreds or even low thousands of dollars when condition and strike quality converge at the rarest levels. But even more compelling than high grades alone are coins with minting errors or mistakes that occurred during the production process. No matter how well engineered the minting process is, occasional anomalies happen, and these anomalies are what coin collectors refer to as error coins. An error coin is one that sh. My dear friends, if you're sitting at your kitchen table sorting through a pile of loose change, maybe getting ready to pour it into a coin counter, or maybe just finding spare coins in the bottom of a drawer. Your eyes scan the familiar faces of pennies, nickels, and quarters, when suddenly one tiny coin catches your attention. It's a 1994 D dime and something about it seems just a little different. Maybe it's the way the mint mark sits above the date, maybe the torch on the reverse looks sharper than usual, or maybe part of the design seems incomplete or oddly positioned. You stop, hold it up to the light, and a thought crosses your mind: what if this dime is worth much more than its face value of 10 cents? What if this unassuming little coin hides a story of minting mistakes, striking errors, and rare varieties that make it a collectible worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? What if hidden treasures really are hiding in your spare change? That's the journey we're about to take, diving deep into the fascinating world of the 1994 D Liberty 1 dime from the United States, exploring not just its history and normal market value, but the errors, mint mark oddities, and remarkable possibilities that can make one of these coins unexpectedly valuable. The 1994 D dime is part of the long-running Roosevelt dime series, first introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a leader forever connected with the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio. Roosevelt's image on the dime became one of the most widely recognized and commonly circulated pieces of U.S. coinage. By 1994, this design had been minted continuously for nearly half a century and was a ubiquitous part of everyday transactions. The mint mark D tells you this particular coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities of the United States Mint. In 1994, the Denver Mint produced over 1.3 billion of these dimes, making it the highest mintage variant for that year's Roosevelt dimes. For most people and most of these coins, that's where the story ends. They were used as everyday pocket change, traded in vending machines, stored in coin jars, and spent like any other dime. In typical circulation condition, worn from decades of handling, a 1994 D dime is usually worth near or only slightly above its face value of 10 cents, maybe 15 cents or 25 cents depending on where. But the world of coin collecting views things quite differently. Collectors aren't just looking for face value, they're looking at rarity, condition, minting quality, and unique characteristics. That's where the real story of the 1994 D dime begins, because while most of these coins are common and unremarkable, a small fraction display qualities that can increase their value far beyond 10 cents. Some of these come from being in exceptionally high grade or condition, while others arise from errors and anomalies that occurred during the minting process. These errors, mistakes, and variations are what make certain 1994 D dimes collectible and, in the rarest cases, highly sought after and valuable. To understand why some of these coins can command much higher prices, we first need to talk about condition and grading. Coins are graded on a scale from poor circulated condition all the way up to pristine mint state condition. Mint state grades labeled MS60 through MS70 reflect coins that were never released into circulation and show no signs of wear from handling. A 1994 D dime in a high mint state grade can be worth several dollars or more, simply because collector demand for clean, pristine examples is far greater than for worn circulation coins. A typical 1994 D dime in a higher uncirculated grade, for example MS60 or MS63, might bring a few dollars to a collector. The more pristine the coin and the sharper the strike, the more valuable it becomes. A finely struck coin with minimal contact marks and strong detail can often sell for much more than the face value even without any errors. Moreover, collectors pay special attention to how well the design elements are struck. On Roosevelt dimes, there's a feature known as the full bands designation, referring to the horizontal lines on the torch on the reverse of the coin. When these bands are fully separated and sharply defined, it's a sign that the coin was struck with great detail. On 1994 dimes, especially the Denver variety, this full bands designation is comparatively scarce in high grades, and coins exhibiting it have attracted attention from collectors. According to market data, 1994 D dimes with the full bands designation in high mint state condition have been known to sell for prices far exceeding their normal counterparts, in some cases into the hundreds or even low thousands of dollars at auction. For example, a 1994 D dime graded MS68 with full bands reportedly achieved a sale price of around $1,680 at a major auction. But beyond condition and the full bands variety, there are actual fizz. My dears, now we discuss on the third history of 1999 D Roosevelt dime, one you might have seen thousands of times in your life and always spent without a second thought. Yet something about this one makes you pause, maybe the way the torch bands look on the reverse, maybe the date seems sharper than the others, or maybe the mint mark above the date catches your eye. Suddenly your mind flashes a thought you've seen in videos and articles before. Could this little? Now we're going deep into the history of the 1999 D dime, its circulation value over time, how collectors determine worth, and most importantly why certain errors, mint mark oddities, and quality distinctions make a tiny dime suddenly priceless to the right person. The Roosevelt dime design first appeared in 1946 following the death of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a leader forever connected to the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio. The design, created by engraver John R. Sinek, replaced the Mercury dime and commemorated Roosevelt's legacy. By 1999 the design had been in continuous production for more than half a century, and billions of these dimes had circulated widely in everyday commerce. The 1999 D dime, produced at the Denver Mint, was one of several mint mark varieties struck that year alongside the Philadelphia No Mint Mark and San Francisco's Mint Mark proof issues. The Denver Mint produced approximately 1,397,750,000 of these dimes, meaning that this particular variety is extremely common in circulation. With such a large mintage, most 1999 D dimes you encounter in change are just coins used for everyday transactions, not collectibles placed in albums. Common circulated examples typically trade for roughly 10 cents, the same as their face value, because they are abundant and were widely spent. Many of these coins show the normal signs of wear and tear that come from years of use, faded relief, minor scratches, and softened details. The vast majority remain ordinary change and nothing more. But just because most 1999 D dimes are common in circulation doesn't mean they're all common in the eyes of collectors. That's where the true story begins, because coin collecting isn't just about the coins you see every day, it's about the rarities and nuances that lie hidden beneath the surface. Coin collectors evaluate value based not only on face value or mintage figures, but also on condition, rarity, and minting anomalies. A coin that is in particularly good condition, one that shows minimal wear and retains its original luster, can be worth many times more than face value. A coin that exhibits a minting error or unusual physical characteristic can be worth even more. And in some rare cases, coins that are technically common can be worth astonishing sums because a tiny mistake in the mint's production process created something that should not have existed. Let's begin with one of the simplest ways a 1999 D dime can command value above face condition and grading. Coins are graded by professionals to determine how much wear they have sustained. A coin in circulated condition, one that's been used as everyday currency, usually has limited appeal to serious collectors beyond face value. But coins that have never been circulated, so-called uncirculated or mint state coins, can attract significantly higher prices. These coins show no evidence of wear from circulation and retain crisp, original detail. According to current pricing guides, a 1999 D dime in average uncirculated condition MS60 to MS64 typically trades for around 30 cents to a few dollars due to collector interest. In higher mint state grades like MS65 to MS66, the value can reach around $2 to $5 or more, again depending on market demand and the specific coin's appearance. When you get into the gem uncirculated range MS67 plus with strong luster and detail, the value can climb substantially higher, sometimes into the double-digit dollar range for average uncirculated examples. One particular designation collectors look for on Roosevelt dimes is known as full bands. This refers to the two horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse side of the coin. When these bands are fully separated and sharply defined, it means the coin was struck with excellent detail. On the 1999 D dime, full bands examples are comparatively scarce relative to the total population, especially in higher grades. Coins exhibiting full bands in top grades are often considerably more valuable than their non-full bands counterparts. In fact, coins graded at high levels with the full bands designation have fetched prices in the collector market that far exceed ordinary values for the series. For example, a 1999 D dime graded MS69 with full bands reportedly sold at auction for about $1,800, showing just how much condition combined with quality designation can elevate a coin's market value. But beyond grading and condition, which primarily affect value among collectors, there exists a world of minting. My great friends, what if right there in your pocket change is something unexpectedly valuable? Now, we're diving deep into the world of the 2000p Liberty 1 dime from the United States, its history, how it circulated for decades at face value, what collectors look for, and most importantly the errors and mint anomalies that can make this little coin exceptionally valuable beyond its 10-cent face value. The 2000p Roosevelt dime is part of the long-running Roosevelt dime series, first introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt soon after his death, recognizing his leadership during World War II and his association with the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio. The design features Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. Although earlier U.S. dimes were made of silver, by the year 2000 the one-dime coin was struck on a copper-nickel-clad composition with a pure copper core. This means the coin has no intrinsic precious metal value, just the metal value typical of modern circulating coinage. The Philadelphia Mint produced this coin with the P Mint mark located above the date, and in the year 2000 it struck a huge number of these coins for everyday use. About 1,842,500,000 pieces were produced. With such a colossal mintage, most 2000p Roosevelt dimes are common and abundant in circulation, entering change jars, wallets, and cash registers all over the country. For everyday spending, most of these coins were used exactly as intended, as 10-cent pieces circulating in commerce. You might find them in vending machines, laundry machines, bus fares, or pocket change. The vast majority of ordinary circulated 2000p dimes, those that show wear from handling and years of use, are worth nearly their face value of 10 cents and little more unless they show some unusual feature that attracts collector interest. In standard circulated grades, these coins rarely sell for more than a few cents above face, because they are so abundant and so many were used in circulation. But the story of coin collecting runs much deeper than that. While most coins are worth no more than face value if common and worn, collectors look at a coin's condition, rarity, unique characteristics, and minting anomalies to determine whether it might be worth significantly more. That's why a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, even one from the year 2000, can suddenly become exciting when examined more closely. Whether it's the level of detail in the design, the presence of full bands on the reverse, or unusual errors or misstrikes from the minting process, these factors can push the coin's value far above 10 cents. Let's start with the condition and grading aspect, because that's one of the most straightforward ways a coin's value can exceed face value. Coins are graded on a scale measuring how much wear and tear they show from circulation. A coin that has never been spent, stored in a collection or protective packaging since it was struck at the mint, can be graded as uncirculated or mint state MS. In the case of 2000p Roosevelt dimes, those in higher grading categories, for example MS65, MS66, MS67, and above, can be worth several dollars to even more depending on the grade. According to textbook pricing guides, a standard 2000p Roosevelt dime in MS60 uncirculated condition might be worth around $5 or more to a collector, simply because it has never been worn and retains original mint luster. But collectors often look for something even more specific than general uncirculated condition. On Roosevelt dimes, there is a special collector designation known as full bands. This refers to the two horizontal bands on the torch featured on the reverse side of the coin. When these bands are fully separated, sharply defined, and not merged into each other, it means the coin was struck with exceptional detail. The full bands designation is a marker of strong strike quality, and for certain years, including 2000p, examples that achieve this designation in high grades are much more valuable than those that don't. On the 2000p dime, full bands examples graded MS67 or MS68 and certified by professional grading services have sold for hundreds of dollars. In one documented auction record, a 2000p dime with full bands in MS66 condition sold at auction for more than $150, showing that collectors are willing to pay a premium for coins that are outstandingly well struck. So while condition alone can boost a coin's value above face value, the big leaps in value happen when a coin displays errors and minting mistakes, those rare anomalies that occurred during production at the mint and escaped detection. These errors are exciting because they represent moments where the normal minting process went off script, making the resulting coins unusual or unique compared to the millions of typical strikes. Some of these errors are: what if in that mix of pennies and nickels you've stumbled onto something that could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? That's what we're going to explore in depth here: the fascinating story of the 2001p Liberty One dime, its history, circulation worth, error possibilities, and the reasons it could be much more valuable than 10 cents in the right circumstances. The 2001p Liberty One dime belongs to the Roosevelt dime series, which was first introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt shortly after his death. Roosevelt was associated with the March of Dimes campaign to combat polio, and his image on the dime became one of the most enduring and commonly circulated pieces of United States coinage. The design that debuted in 1946 was created by John R. Sinnock and featured Roosevelt's profile on the obverse front and a torch with olive and oak branches on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. By the year 2001, this design had been in continuous production for over half a century and had become deeply familiar to generations of Americans. Unlike the earlier Roosevelt dimes from before 1965, which were made of 90% silver, by 2001 all Roosevelt dimes were struck on copper nickel-clad planchets, thin copper cores covered by a layer of copper-nickel alloy. This change in composition occurred in the mid-1960s as part of a nationwide shift away from using precious metals in everyday circulating coinage. Because of this composition, a standard 2001p dime has no melt value that exceeds face value and is therefore only worth its 10-cent face value in normal circulation unless it has some special characteristic that makes it collectible. The United States Mint struck approximately 1,369,590,000 of the 2001p Roosevelt dimes at the Philadelphia Mint, an enormous mintage that ensures these coins are common in pocket change even today. Because this mintage figure is so large, the vast majority of 2001p dimes you might find in circulation are simply worth about 10 cents or maybe slightly more if they are in particularly nice condition. Circulated examples that show wear from everyday use generally sell for just above face, sometimes in the 10 to 30 cents range, with modest collector interest mainly because they complete a set rather than because they have notable value on their own. But coin collecting is a world driven not by average usage but by rarity, condition, anomalies, and stories. A piece of metal that's worth 10 cents in everyday use can become much more valuable when collectors take notice of condition, strike quality, design variety, or minting errors that slipped through quality control. That's where the excitement begins with the 2001p dime. One of the first factors collectors consider when determining whether a Roosevelt dime is worth more than face value is condition and how sharply the coin was struck. Coins that have never been used in circulation and that retain their original mint luster are classified as uncirculated or mint state MS. These coins are graded on a scale from MS60 to MS70, with higher numbers indicating better overall quality. A coin in MS60 still shows no wear but may have noticeable contact marks or weaker details, while a coin graded MS67 or above would be exceptionally clean and detailed. For a 2001p dime in uncirculated condition, values can begin around a few dollars and increase significantly as the grade rises. For example, average uncirculated 2001p dimes can sell in the $3 to $6 range in MS60-MS65 condition, and high-grade examples can be valued even higher. Beyond simple uncirculated grading, collectors also pay attention to the quality of the strike on the coin. Roosevelt dimes feature distinctive horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse side. When those bands appear fully separated and sharply defined, numismatists designate the coin with full bands FB, a sign of a strong and complete strike. A coin with this designation generally carries a premium over similar coins that do not exhibit the full bands characteristic. In the 2001 series, full bands dimes in higher grades are relatively scarce compared to the total mintage, and coins graded MS67 or MS68 with full bands have been known to command premium prices among collectors. In fact, high-grade full bands examples have been known to sell for significantly more than standard uncirculated coins, highlighting how strike quality can influence market value. But the most exciting possibilities for dramatic value increases come from minting errors, physical irregularities that occur during the manufacturing process when something goes wrong. Error coins are exciting because they are essentially one-of-a-kind or extremely rare deviations from normal production examples, often representing situations where a misfeed, machine malfunction, or die problem altered the coin in ways not intended by the mint. Some of these errors are obvious and drama. My dears, if you're cleaning out an old jar of loose change, or maybe going through coins that have been tucked away in a drawer for years, and you pull out a small silver-colored dime with the date 2003 and A.D. mint mark above it. At first glance it looks like just another dime, 10 cents, the kind of coin you've seen 1,000 times. But something about it nags at you. Maybe the torch on the reverse looks sharper than usual, maybe the edge seems slightly odd, Or maybe you've heard stories about coins that look ordinary but sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars because of errors, mint mistakes, or rare varieties. Could this 2003 dime be one of those rare finds? Could it be worth far more than its face value of 10 cents? The answer is that most of these coins really are just 10-cent pieces, but under the right circumstances certain 2003 dimes have brought extraordinary sums at auction because of unique minting errors or exceptional condition. Today we're going to explore in depth the history, circulation value, market value, and the many possible errors and varieties that can make a 2003 Roosevelt dime much more valuable than you might expect. The 2003 Liberty One dime is part of the long-running Roosevelt dime series first introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt shortly after his death. Roosevelt was a central figure in leading the United States through the Great Depression and World War II, and he was deeply associated with the March of Dimes campaign against polio. The coin's obverse features Roosevelt's profile, and the reverse depicts a torch flanked by an olive branch symbolizing peace and an oak branch symbolizing strength, powerful American symbols that have remained consistent for decades. By 2003, Roosevelt dimes were made of copper nickel clad, meaning an inner core of copper sandwiched between layers of copper nickel alloy. This composition replaced the earlier silver content that was used before 1965, so modern Roosevelt dimes like the 2003 don't have intrinsic precious metal value. Their metal content is not worth more than face value, and under normal circumstances the coin simply circulated as everyday currency. The Denver Mint struck approximately 986,500,000 of these 2003 dimes, an enormous mintage that makes them common in circulation and generally not rare or valuable on their own. In everyday circulation, a 2003 dime worn from years of use is typically worth its face value of 10 cents and maybe a few cents more if it happens to be in particularly clean condition. Collectors looking at common coins often grade circulated examples from good to fine to extremely fine, and even in uncirculated grades without special attributes, the coin values tend to remain modest. For example, typical uncirculated 2003 dimes might sell for a few dollars at most, while basic certified mint state examples are usually valued right around that range or slightly higher. So why would anyone pay attention to a dime that's normally worth 10 cents? Because in the world of coin collecting, numismatics value isn't just about how much a coin is supposed to be worth. It's about condition, rarity, demand, and most especially unusual features such as mint errors and anomalies that occur during striking. Hundreds of millions of 2003 dimes exist, but among them are a tiny handful of coins that defy expectations and have sold at auction for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Before we dive into specific error types and their potential values, it's important to understand how collectors assess value beyond everyday usage. One of the first factors is condition and professional grading. Uncirculated coins that show no wear and retain intense original luster are graded on a numeric scale from MS60 to MS70, with higher grades indicating better detail and fewer marks. In the case of the 2003 dime, a regular uncirculated MS60 example might only be worth a few dollars, significantly more than face, but not extraordinary. However, high-grade examples with strong strike detail can attract higher prices. Another important collector term is full bands, which refers to the horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse of the dime. When these bands are fully separated and sharply defined, the coin earns the full bands designation, a sign of a very strong strike. A 2003 dime with full bands in high-graded condition is scarce than ordinary examples and commands higher values. Auction records show that a 2003 dime graded MS68 FB Mint State 68 with full bands sold for around $103, a significant premium compared to ordinary uncirculated values. That's still not the kind of value that explodes into four figures yet. But now we get into what really sets the hearts of coin collectors racing: minting errors and mistakes. These are physical anomalies that occur during production at the mint, usually due to machine misfeeds, tooling issues, planchet problems.